Hey guys, I just wanted to talk real quick about something that I find kind of interesting. I just recently played through a few times Lies of P, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I actually ended up giving it a 10 out of 10 in my review. And like I typically do when I really just thoroughly enjoy a game, I like to kind of see what the conversation is like online for it. And I've seen a critique through some reviews and some people playing through the game, like streaming the game and stuff like that, that I find kind of interesting. And that is this sort of complaint that the game relies too heavily on delayed attacks in order to make the game difficult. And I've seen a lot of people, you know, uh, on like podcasts and like I said, reviews and live streams talk about how they feel that this is a cheap difficulty. It's unfair difficulty and it's poor game design. And the first thing I find interesting about this is that what other game utilized delays a lot in attack patterns that people didn't seem to complain about at all, which was Elden Ring. Now, FromSoft did this a ton in Elden Ring, all the way from the first time you the first time you fight Margaret, at the very beginning of the game, it kind of sets the tone for this is going to be a very different Souls experience. And I didn't really see anybody complaining about Elden Ring utilizing delayed attacks, but it does all the time. It not only does the Lies of P thing where they come down with the attack and then they attack you, but it also does the thing where it will perfectly space out its attacks to catch you from panic rolling. And like I said, I didn't really see anybody complaining about this, but for some reason, when Lies of P does it, it's now a big problem, and it's a super unfair mechanic. And of course, I can very easily dismantle that entire argument with two words, skill issue or get good, which is very true. A delay is functionally no different after the first time you've experienced it as learning an attack pattern from any sort of character. And this is always something that I have said is what is the difference when you're first fighting an enemy between them going, right? And you experiencing that for the first time and learning that it's a delay versus a character going, right? And then throwing in like a little double slicerini, right? Or the first time that a boss, you think they can only do a 3-hit combo, right? They bing, bong, bing. And they've only done the 3-hit combo, several times. And then they go bing, bong, bing, bong, right? And they catch you with that fourth hit that they can throw in there. What is really functionally the difference? In both situations, it is something that is unpredictable. It is a surprise to the player, and it's probably something that's going to catch the player the first time that it happens. And if the player is good, they'll adapt accordingly. They will remember, that delay happens, or that double sweep happens, or that third hit combo can go into a fourth hit combo, right? And the player will adapt accordingly and they will persevere. So for me, the idea that a delayed attack is somehow an unfair mechanic is just silly to me, especially because in Lies of P, these delayed attacks, it's not like they're one-shotting you. I would actually argue that something like the waterfowl dance with Millennia in Elden Ring is far more unfair of a mechanic because that is a just comes out of nowhere. The first time you're fighting her comes out of nowhere and just essentially insta kills you. I think that you could probably count on both hands the number of people that actually survived their first waterfowl dance. Right? It's practically zero. It will kill every single player. that comes across it, right? And I would argue that's far more unfair. Or the fact that Millennia heals while she fights you. I'd say that's far more unfair than anything in Lies of P, especially a delay. But the thing that I find very interesting about it is the thought that it's unfair. I think that developers are in a very interesting situation, right? Where the truth is people are much better now at Souls-like games than they were back in Dark Souls 1. Right? That's just kind of the truth of the matter. Back in Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Dark Souls 2, even Dark Souls 3, and like Bloodborne and stuff, people were way worse at this type of game. Momo, knock it off, man. What the hell? I'm trying to record a video. Dude's just eating his ass. Um, Stop it. Jesus Christ. Just what a nasty, nasty dog. But anyway, uh, people used to be way worse at these types of games. So now, as a developer, you're kind of stuck in an interesting situation where how do you make these games harder without, doing something that's particularly egregious and that will offend people? And honestly, I think when you weigh all of your options, I think delayed attacks make the most sense from a developer standpoint because think about it, right? If you are creating a game and you want it to be a Souls-like and you know that players are significantly better at these games now, that they've played so many of them, and you know that the people that are likely to be buying your Souls-like game have played a lot of Souls-like games, right? Because they're interested in that genre, then you really are kind of limited in terms of what you can do to keep that game difficult because Souls fans are masochists and they will actually complain. We're seeing this a lot with Lords of the Fallen. People are complaining that the game is too easy. So these guys are masochists. They want these games to be extremely difficult. They want to be tested. And if you make the game too easy, they're going to complain. And the funny thing is that maybe the game is not necessarily easy. Maybe if it came out back with Dark Souls 1, right, people would think it was very difficult, very hard. But we're not really in that situation, right? We're in this world where people are now very good at these games. So, what are your options as a game developer to make sure that, shit is still hard? I mean, you can do it the actual lazy way. People say delayed attacks are lazy. I think the lazy way is to just pump up their health and pump up the damage that they deal. I think that is by far the easiest way to make your game harder, right? It's what you see most of the big game devs do. It's what like Bethesda does with their difficulty options. And I think that's just a very lazy way. None of us want to see that in a Souls-like game. Momo, knock it off, man. What is with you? What are you doing? Jesus Christ. Sorry. But dude just keeps going to the corner to eat ass. I don't get it. Jesus, man. You could have done this all day. Why now? Sorry. Anyway. I'm not re-recording this. Okay? So it is what it is. But I think that's like the easiest way to do difficulty, right? Is you just crank up the damage that enemies do, you crank up their health, and it doesn't feel good as a player. The second way that they could do it would be to add in, these actual cheap mechanics like Millennia. Like, Millennia is not a hard boss at all in Elden Ring without the healing. If you remove the self heal from that fight, it is so much easier, it's not even funny. Like, it is so much easier. Or you even just give her an attack where, she stays stationary and starts healing or something like that you can cancel, right? It is infinitely easier because really the only thing that Millennia has that makes her tough is the self heal and waterfowl dance. And once you learn waterfowl dance, which definitely takes a few attempts, but once you learn that, the fight is quite easy. It's just the self heal that's fucking annoying, right? And it severely limits, worse players from using things like summons because she's just going to heal off of the summons. So I think adding a shitty mechanic like that, like a self heal, is another way that they can introduce difficulty. Or let's use Moog as an example. Moog has that unavoidable damage. Now I know that there is apparently a way to counter that chant that he does that hits you 3 times. And essentially, maybe it hits you 3 times or 4 times, I don't know. But it will essentially kill you, right? And I never knew that there was like some story way or whatever, some other way with an item or some horse shit to counter that. So when I fought that fight, I just, monkey brain was chugging Estises through it. And that was my way of beating Moog. But, you could add some horse shit like that where it's some sort of cheap mechanic where it's unavoidable damage that the player's guaranteed to take unless they do this, obscure side thing, in which case then it will allow them to not take the damage. And for me, I think that that is a very poor implementation of difficulty as well. So I think that delayed attacks just make the most sense because they are the least annoying way to still keep your game difficult. And that's what we're seeing, right? We're seeing Lies of P. People are touting it as being one of the hardest Souls-likes. I personally don't agree with it, but I do agree it's very difficult. But people are saying that game is very hard, too hard, and I think that that's really why they're venting their frustrations at these delayed attacks. I think that at the end of the day, it ends up being sort of a skill issue thing, and the easiest thing that people can point to is the delayed attacks. Now, listen, I've done an entire parry only run at this point, right? With no dodging whatsoever, and if I dodged, I had to kill myself. And I played through Lies of P like that, and yes, it was very difficult. You really had to learn the timings on things. However, it's very much doable, and I would actually argue that it's really not too different after a couple attempts as just learning a character's moveset normally. And even as I'm playing through Lords of the Fallen now, which I am completely detesting, especially after playing Lies of P, because it's just so incredibly clunky. And, I'll get into that in the Lords of the Fallen review when I eventually beat that shitty game. But, but even as I'm playing through Lords of the Fallen, I'm looking at the enemy animations and I'm going, that's technically a delayed attack. That's technically a delayed attack. Any of these attacks where the enemy's like dragging the axe and then slamming, or bringing the axe down and then slamming, right? I'm like, all of these are technically delayed attacks and nobody's complaining about these. So I just find it kind of interesting the things that people choose to fight and the things that people choose to, criticize about a game, because this is something that, like I said, I've seen a lot with Lies of P now, is these people criticizing the delayed attacks. And I'll be honest, while yes, they are difficult, I think it is the least annoying way that developers can increase the difficulty of these games in order to combat the fact that these players are just getting much better at them. Right, and not only are the players getting much better at these games, but they're also far more critical of difficulty and sort of masochistic in the fact that they want more difficulty. They want to die a lot. People are upset if they're only dying 50, 60, 70 times in these games. Like, they want to be dying hundreds of times. And so the fact that we have to sort of meet that desire for challenge while also trying to not just be the most annoying horse shit ever designed, I think is very tough for game developers. And I think that delayed attacks are just the easiest solution to the problem, because like I said, they're not particularly egregious, at least not to me, and I don't think, you know, in general they are. And I think that I would much rather have delayed attacks than enemies that are healing themselves or unavoidable damage unless you do this, obscure side quest or have this little item and you use it or something like that. You know, I would much rather, or like fucking Lords of the Fallen, where you shift into this umbral realm, and then that'll allow you to interact with this little soul device thing, which will blow up and it'll knock the enemy over. It's like I would honestly just much rather have a straight fucking fight with the enemy and have them use delayed attacks and stuff, and I'm not going to feel cheated as a player or like there's some sort of gimmick stopping me. But hey, that's just me. Apparently, I'm in the minority here because delayed attacks are the second coming of Satan himself, and they're just the worst thing ever, and Lies of Peace sucks as a result. So I don't know, dude. I think it's a little silly that we didn't hear these complaints back in Elden Ring and everybody was jerking that game off. And, I'm not an Elden Ring hater. I enjoyed Elden Ring enough, you know, but I'm just saying it's a little sketch that they're complaining about one thing while the other thing is like totally fine. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good one. Bye bye.